there's a tendency to complain about people and get on a train and a momentum of just kind of going through every bad thing that they did and really marinating in that. And often when women get together, they're talking about their relationships, they're venting in this way. But what they create is they create a story in their head about this person is bad and they're always doing this bad thing. And then they'll say, sometimes you'll start to say things like, oh, he's got these traits that are like this psychological profile. What that does is that creates a story that then starts to become a self-fulfilled prophecy, because you have an assumption that this person, oh, they have no respect for me, they have no regard, they have no curiosity, they don't want to get to know me, they flake, they're unreliable. You start to say that kind of stuff. And because you believe and you're always saying those things over and over, you're concentrating on all of those bad things and complaining about all those negative things, that then that story, it could only perpetuate because your assumption is that that person's unreliable. And then you're looking for that confirmation bias. You're looking for all the signs that they're going to let you down. Whereas, and this took me a long time to understand, because for me, it's like, well, I want to live in reality and not get duped. I want to not be a fool. I want to, it's good to focus on what's wrong so you can get out or figure out what's right. But what I realized is when that you start to have a calcified assumption, this person doesn't care about me, this person's unreliable or whatever, this person always flakes, then you that happens more and more because you have an assumption, and then it just keeps playing out because that's the kind of person you assume they are. It's like when they have that saying about, in order to trust someone, in order to be trustworthy, you have to trust people. And it's the same way. If you trust people, then they're going to be trustworthy because you view them already that way, so they rise into that assumption. Now, of course, it seems like I can tell there's probably resistance to like almost adding a delusional frame over a situation and trying to assume that they're better than they are in order to get that better behavior. I understand why there's a resistance to doing that, because what if you just end up rationalizing and enabling really bad behavior? Well, it's not even about what they're doing. It's about how you have to realize that once you get a story in your head or an assumption about how somebody acts, you act a certain way. You act in a way that brings out that behavior because you're assuming that they hate you, for instance. Well, they're not going to. When you have an assumption that someone hates you, you kind of have maybe you avert your eyes, you're terse, you have a way that's not very welcoming, you're kind of closed off, and they respond by more closed off. So yeah, that confirms that they hate you because you're acting as though they hate you. But if you were to Photoshop on their face, the face of someone that loves you, and imagine that they love you and that there's a openness there, then they would respond in turn with more openness. They would soften. They would truly conform to your assumption. So it's really important to realize once you start to have assumptions and judgments about people, because once you get that really solidified, crystallized, it will play out as you think, because your behavior is going to operate from thinking that they're an unreliable flake. And so they start being more and more unreliable because you have an assumption and they feel that, and they can't, sometimes it feels like it can't win. I even know this on the other end, where if I know people have an assumption about me, I feel kind of boxed in. So then it's like, well, what can I do? So just be aware of all of these assumptions you have about people can become self-fulfilled prophecies. So if you find yourself complaining about someone over and over again, you're like, they don't see me, they don't understand me, they don't want to get to know me, they're not curious, like you just keep having this kind of momentum of all the negative ways that they don't like you. Instead, in your head, it's not so much about, I mean, yes, stop complaining to others, but like in your head, start to just have a different assumption, like, oh, they're really, like, even if it's completely not what you actually think, but just to start to have a different story. But say, oh, they always are happier when they're around me. Like, start saying, I know it sounds crazy, but just look at how that assumption changes and shifts the dynamic. So if you start saying, oh, this person's always happy when they're around me, they're always excited to see me. Like, you just start saying that, and it's amazing because you have been repeating that to your subconscious, and then you see that person, and they're going to reflect it back. And even if it takes, like, there's going to be some wavering with some of your assumptions still, like, they hate me, but another part of you just thinks, like, oh, they love me. They love me. They hate me so much, it must be love. Like, whatever it takes for you to not really, because the more that you concentrate on the bad of that person and the dynamic, the more that keeps coming out. So if you're in a workplace situation where you really do need it to resolve and get better, then just assume that person does have good intentions and they do care, and they're just a little, like, they kind of have a rough mask, but underneath they're a marshmallow. Like, tell yourself a story that softens them and watch how it will actually play out, and they will conform to your assumptions. Whether you assume the worst or the best, people rise to the assumptions that you hold about them. And it's the same with you. There are different aspects, like certain people bring out different aspects of you because of what they think you are. Like, when I'm around people that I know think that I'm funny, I am funnier. When I'm around people that I know think I'm smart, I'm smarter. When I'm around people that think I'm like a weird, nervous, awkward freak, I'm acting more nervous and weird. So when you even know an assumption someone has about you, it creates, like, there's certain things you notice that, oh, I've been on the other side of this, so this is true because my behavior will conform to what I think people think I am. So it's just so interesting, and just be aware of when you complain, and just turn that on its head and assume the best, and watch how people will be as good or as bad as you assume them to be. And it's really cool to see it.